Grüezi, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann. I hope you're all vaccinated, because today we are ascending to a sanatorium with contagious lung diseases in which a kind of dance of death of the old world that is a swan song to Europe before the First World War takes place. The most important figures are Hans Castorp, 24 to begin with, stems from a Hamburg merchant family, has just finished his studies, and before starting as an engineer at a wharf, he visits his cousin Joachim Ziemßen at the sanatorium Berghof in Davos in Switzerland. He's an officer and here for treatment of his tuberculosis by Hofrat Behrens, the director of the institute. The treatment consists mainly of rest cures and trust in God. They didn't have a lot of choices back then. Another patient is the Italian writer Lodovico Settembrini, a political activist fighting for enlightenment and humanism and democracy, who is to become a mentor of Castorp's. And he is quite grumpy when Castorp falls in love with Madame Claudia Chauchat, literally hot cat, and later listens to the extremist insinuations of the Jesuit Nafta. Finally, we mention the plantation owner and coffee king, Mynheer Peperkorn, who pops up towards the end of the novel, a royal personality. Those are only the most important of the many figures that inhabit this long novel. After The Death in Venice, Tommy Mann wanted to write something short and funny, especially since his wife had found out that he was bisexual when reading it. In order to recover from this shock, she went to a sanatorium in Davos in 1912, this one, from which she reported to her husband, so he started to write his little something in 1913, got interrupted by World War I, and bang, when he was done in 1924, he had unfortunately written 1,000 pages. And off we go. Joachim picks up his cousin Hans at the train station in Davos village. Heya! Hi Joachim, nice place. I'm going to stay for 3 weeks and will take you back home with me then. What? No, I'm not healthy yet. The clocks go a little different here, you'll see. And he shows him around. There's a fixed daily routine which he goes by, I miss the army, you know, and introduces him to people. Then we get to know a little about Hans' background. I'm an orphan, I've grown up at my grandfather's and then at my uncle Tinappel's. I've inherited a little money, but you can't live off interest nowadays. Wait a minute, up here I could, and I'm not so particularly fond of regular work either. Then he meets Behrens. Aha! Huh, I'm not a patient, I'm healthy. Oh, really? Well, just pretend you're part of the gang already, ha ha. And he meets Settembrini. Welcome to the realm of shadows. I'm not a patient, I'm just visiting. But he starts to find it very interesting. Sickness in general is a really noble touch, and the food is excellent. Bang, the dining room door. Ha! Who's always slamming that door? That's Madame Claudia Chauchat. Keep your hands off her, she's married, and better go back home. But why? Because you had better build ships and serve progress instead of getting sick and decadent around here. But Hansi starts to like it on the mountain. Right, if I'm not sick, I could as well do a little hiking. And he takes a walk, overestimating his endurance and underestimating the altitude, and gets a nosebleed. Gotta lay down a bit. Why on earth am I now thinking of my school friend Schiebeslav Hippe, who lent me his pencil once? Dozed off there. Oh no, I'm late for Dr. Krokowski's lecture now. Dr. Krokowski is Behrens' assistant who delivers regular lectures on psychoanalysis every 2 weeks, and Castorp sneaks in, being blood-stained with a nosebleed as he is, sits behind Claudia, who turns around, and he goes, Ha! She looks exactly like Schiebeslav Hippe. Maybe that's why I had to think of him. And Krokowski goes, Right, ladies and gents, love is sickness, and sickness is nothing but transformed love, which is why everybody ought to do a psychoanalysis with me. Then the 3 weeks are over and he's due to depart. I think I got a little cold. Better take your temperature. 37.6 degrees Celsius this morning. That's not to be taken lightly. I've got an appointment with Behrens tomorrow. Come along. And Behrens first auscultates Joachim and goes, When can I leave, doctor? Don't be so impatient, young man. Now you, Castorp. And he auscultates him too. You're an old patient. You've had tuberculosis some time ago. I would lay down for 3 weeks. Okay. And he stays in bed for 3 weeks, is x-rayed afterwards, and then caught in the same feedback loop as Joachim. So when can I leave? Don't be so impatient, young man. Well, Settembrini always warns him, Go on, leave! Otherwise, Behrens is really a nice bloke, smokes cigars with him. Back then, smoking was still healthy, and shows him a self-painted portrait of Madame Chauchat. What, you painted that yourself? Incredible, the skin is so lifelike. Yeah, female curves are fat tissue. I know my way around those, which is why Hansi now dedicates himself to the study of anatomy. When after Christmas a fellow patient dies, as happens frequently, Castorp goes, You know, Joachim, we really should take more care of the sick and dying around here. and he drags him with flowers from one sick bed to the next. They even visit a local graveyard with a dying young girl, a very romantic outing. And before you can say time lapse, 7 months are over, and it's carnival, which Settembrini doesn't like at all. This is just like Walpurgis night enforced. The mountain's mad with magic in this night. Real magic mountain, haha. And they play party games. You got a pencil? He boldly asks Claudia, who he's hardly talked to before. Voila! And they talk French all night. Oh, everybody's perdu! And she goes, don't forget to return my pencil, in French. And he probably gives it back in the same night which they seem to spend together. On the next morning, she's gone. Settembrini is a little cross with Castor because he hasn't listened to him but fooled around with Claudia, and when he talks to him again a couple of weeks later, it's to say goodbye to the two cousins. So A, I'm terminally ill, and B, I can't afford to live in the sanatorium any longer, I'll live in the village now. And a couple of weeks later again, they meet him when they are walking in the village where he's hanging around with another guy and pretends not to notice. Hey, Settembrini! Okay, so this is Professor Nafta, who teaches at the local high school, my neighbor and discussion enemy. Yeah, we disagree about virtually everything, for example, politics. The catastrophe must come on. The two cousins then start to visit them, who will battle for hundreds of pages about religion, philosophy, and politics. We need to dare more democracy. Nonsense, we need a dictatorship of the Pope. You Jesuit, you Ned Flanders. As time goes by, Joachim is getting impatient and tells Behrens, right, I'm leaving. But in 6 months you could be healthy. And you? Am I healthy enough for that? Yeah. What? Castor doesn't like that at all, so he takes his temperature until he's got fever again and stays at the sanatorium. A little later, his uncle Tinapel crops up in order to take him home. Here, are you mad? 1.5 years of holidays up here? Well, and Behrens goes, how nice of you to visit your nephew, especially as you're quite sick yourself. What? And he's gone with the wind, lest he gets stuck here as well, unlike Hans, who stays on. Why don't I do a little skiing with all that snow up here in the mountains? And he's careless and gets into a blizzard. Oh, I mustn't sleep. Huh, what's that? An idyllic coast, beautiful people, brave new world, just like Settembrini's humanist vision? Huh, what's that? 2 old hags in a temple butchering a little child? Gloomiest medieval Nafta vision. Ah, that's all bullshit. A person should, for the sake of love and goodness, not hand power to death over his life. With this wonderful thought, he wakes up, is saved from the blizzard, and forgets his spiritual enlightenments at once. Half a year has hardly passed when Joachim contritely returns. At least I'm a lieutenant now. Oh! And he dies shortly afterwards. Oops! At least Claudia returns. Yay! Unfortunately, she's not alone, but accompanied by Mynheer Peperkorn. Oh no! In spite of being jealous of him, Castor is also fascinated by this anti-intellectual Epicurean. Ladies and gentlemen, right, all right, work done. And they party together, although Peperkorn is quite sick, and one evening he goes to Claudia. You love him, don't you? He loves me. Let's be friends for Peperkorn's sake. Okay. And then he visits Peperkorn, who finishes his sentences for a change. So, you love Madame? Let's be friends for Claudia's sake. Okay. And they go for a last outing together, during which Peperkorn delivers a royal last speech, of which, unfortunately, nothing can be heard due to a waterfall nearby. Work done! And in the following night he poisons himself, and Claudia departs for good. Oh, bugger it! Then the great tedium begins. It's boring around here. All take photos or play cards. Wow, a gramophone. Now he takes care of this gramophone, and once it is used at a séance at Dr. Krokowski's. I greet you. I don't believe in this bullshit. Joachim's ghost! I'm aggressive now. And similarly, the old enemies Nafta and Settembrini are irritable. During an outing they are doing with a couple of other people, they get into a real fight. Death is romantic. Oh, you're such a terrorist. What? I demand satisfaction. What? And Nafta insists on a duel, although the humanist Settembrini doesn't like it at all. And when it is Settembrini's turn to shoot, he just raises his pistol up into the air and goes bang. Nafta goes, you shot into the air, you coward! And turns the pistol against himself and commits suicide. And they go, wah! And this shot almost marks the thunderbolt with which World War I begins, for it is 1914 now. What? I've been here for 7 years? No, I've got to really go home now. Bye, democracy, Settembrini. And humming a romantic song that really takes up Nafta's gloomy desire for death, he goes back to the lowlands, becomes a soldier, and probably dies on the front. The Magic Mountain has been called an anti-novel of education, for although Castorp arrives as a naive young man like Parzival on the mountain, he really can't learn anything from the humanist Settembrini because, just as liberal Europe, he is already sick to death. It is an era of extremists like NAFTA. And it is quite disturbing that 100 years later we again have to defend democracy and liberty against today's terrorists and extremists. I very much hope that never again will nationalism and hate supersede the tolerance and peace that were so dearly bought in the 20th century. And this, dear congregation, was The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann. Vielen Dank.